Richard Montoya, Water and Power. You're directing. Uh, how did the whole process get started? And you've done so much in TV, film, plays, everything. How did the process get started of you becoming a director and wanting to do Water and Power and bring it onto the screen?
Well, I had to do that. And you have to keep it.
I will keep it.
Oh, man. The process. Well, Water and Power simply started out as a play on stage and at the Mark Taper Forum here in Los Angeles, a prestigious stage, probably our best stage west of the Mississippi, but just a beautiful place where Zoot Suit was presented and Blackout Speaks and so many historical plays. So we had done Chavez Ravine in, I think, 2002, 2004, and then wanted to follow Chavez Ravine up with something more modern, but on the same narratives of power and corruption. But this time we had just elected a Chicano mayor, and we had a Latino sheriff, and it just seemed time to look at the paradigm shift of now a new generation of Latinos in power. And we're the same traps, we're the same problems that plague other politicians and other peoples that strive to gain and acquire, power and wealth. Would those same problems affect ambitious, young, upwardly mobile Latinos? And the answer is yes, absolutely. It happens. It happens in the African American community. It happened in the Irish American community, Italian American community, Jewish. Every people's, every new generation of Americans that have arrived have always strived, and some of those stories are stories of hardworking and honest people, but some of those stories are about people that try to take shortcuts or use power in a way that benefits just a few. And I was very interested in that, the idea of corruption in Chicano circles or upwardly mobile cops or politicians. And also at the street level, I was interested in the guys on the street and how they view that. So Water and Power are two brothers, but they really are anchored by a third character named Norte Sur, who is a more of a street person. You might call a cholo or a vato loco, played by Emilio Rivera from Sons of Anarchy. And it's a beautiful triangle of the two brothers, Nicolas Gonzalez, Enrique Murquiano, and Emilio Rivera. Water, Power, Norte Sur. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Sort of feeling, and so I wanted that poetry to be in the movie.
So, what was you could have based this in any city in this country.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about LA to film here and really bring out something? Was it something that came out in the city and what you've seen coming down here, living down here? What was it that LA was a great place for this?
Well, I mean, ever since I moved here in the early 90s, I just was always fascinated with LA and would drive around at night just looking at the city and taking it in from the Eastside to Hollywood to Griffith Park. I just couldn't believe that I actually lived. My first apartment by myself was in Hollywood, and I just thought it was such a fascinating and haunted neighborhood. And then I moved more towards the Eastside, and that was a whole different sort of rhythm. And then when you look at film lore and the old films going back to Chinatown and even Blade Runner, L.A. had always played not a background role, but a major character role. I even liked Collateral, but more often than not, I'd see a movie where the East Side was just used as a backdrop, or we need a colorful setting, so we'll shoot the Piñata store, but the movie Zoot Suit and American Me and even Ed Wood, these movies are Los Angeles is so much drenched in the movie. It's oozing in the movie to live and die in L.A. And the films that get it right always get the East Side right. They don't just, get the West Side right, but it's imperative that you get, the East Side is an integral part of the city. It's the backbone. It's the service work. It's the workers. It's all the people that, clean the pools and do the lawns and take care of the babies. They all go back home at night to the East Side. And so I've always been just utterly fascinated with that. So as a result, all my plays have to do with LA, and my first movie has to do with LA, and I really can't imagine writing about anything other than that. That is all the James Ellroy books, the Black Dahlia, LA Confidential, and the more academic books like Rudy Acuna and Mike Davis' City of Courts. These are absolutely essential reading, I think, for people that love the city of LA, want to know how and why it was laid out this way, and what is the future. Like, God forbid, catastrophe, will Beverly Hills do better than Boyle Heights? And I think the easy answer to that is yes, and I just want to know why.
In this industry, being Latinos, it's very hard to break through. It's very hard it's becoming easier because of the social media, YouTube technology. Do you think it's changing? You're seeing more Latinos on screen, more Latinos on TV, or is it still the same type of thinking that it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
No, it's not the same thinking as it was 20, 30 years ago. I think that we've learned some important lessons, and in Water and Power are very much making a movement out of our Chicano cinema. We're saying that Chicano and Chicana storytelling is important, and for so long, Hispanics in the industry told us, don't do that. Just tell a universal story. And then when you see things like Sopranos or Woody Allen or something that's very Italian or something that's very Jewish, you're like, man, that storyteller's really retained onto their culture. They're not backing away from that. And then you see the fierce nature in which the Mexican filmmakers just blasted onto the scene with Amores Perros y Tu Mamá También, a whole movement of directors and filmmakers that were unconcerned if you knew every nuance about a small neighborhood in Mexico City. And I always felt as U.S. Latinos, we were too worried or too concerned, well, gee, will this please everyone? If you make something that's very authentic and organic and it's real, I think people will respond, and I think that Water and Power, we've managed to create a very real world. And even a comic book world, in the way that when I watch The Godfather, there's a comic book structure to it. The cars, the guns, the gangsters. You could easily make a graphic novel out of Water and Power, and it would still work. It's the city at night. It's the shadows. It's the people that run the city when everyone else is asleep. And I think people respond, and I've sat with Anglo audiences and African American audiences and Latino audiences, and they really marvel as to how we were able to create an authentic world of essentially LA at night. And because LA is known throughout the world as a city of sunshine, but when the sun goes down, it turns into another kind of a city. And so just by getting the movie done and getting it produced and finding the money and attracting the actors that we did, that should be an indication to all that although change is slow, change is underway. And I can see it on the networks little by little, and I can see it at the movies with Chavez coming out in March and Water and Power coming out in May. We're very different movies. That's a much more epic, bigger movie. But we're a small movie with big dreams, and there's an epic nature at the center of our film. There's a lot of things going on in Water and Power. It endeavors to be big things, but it's not going to be all things to all people, and I think that's one of the successes of it. It is a specific slice of life, and we didn't try to please the entire world. And I think that we'll actually find more of an audience that way than had we just said, this is a generic Hispanic film. Two girls are going to go shopping in Beverly Hills, and then they have to return to the East Side at night. It's almost the opposite of that.
So, final two questions. Who was your muse growing up, and when you were started to draw this? And two, when can we expect Water and Power in theaters, and where can we find it?
Well, let me take the last question first, because it's very important that people know that the weekend of May 2nd, leading into Cinco de Mayo, hashtag Cinco de Mayo, hashtag Water Power Film, Facebook, Water and Power Movie, AND movie, and this is part of making it our movement. This is part of getting people invested in, let's rent some buses. Let's get groups from Fresno. Because that's exactly what happened when we were at Nalip and the different film festivals. These screenings sold out like so fast, which is wonderful. So we really want people to go to the theater, to sit in a seat with, a lot of other people and strangers, and sit in the dark and watch a beautiful story about the East Side, two beautiful brothers from the East Side of LA. And the first part of that question was...
Who was your muse?
My muse. Why, you were, Michael Sandoval, when I was a child.
But I was
I had different forms. There was always that amazing teacher that could transform you, as a child. I remember my dad being very involved in the United Farm Worker movement and always coming home with like little stickers, Huelga stickers, United Farm Worker stickers. And I had a teacher that just let me put them all over my desk and to draw on my desk, which, you could really get in trouble in elementary school if you draw on your desk. But Mrs. Green allowed me to really flourish as an artist. And I just remember not paying particular attention to the math studies or whatever, and she just allowed for that. And I don't think it was detrimental, or she just recognized early on that I was an artist, and she was very beautiful, I remember. And then again, because so many meetings and organizational things with the United Farm Workers would happen in and around our house, there was a young attorney with the UFW, Judy Graham, an Ivy League, Jewish chick from, Harvard. And I just remember as a kid really being smitten by her and the way that she talked. And I really believe that Judy was one of the first ones that made me love language, because they were talking almost very in legalese. They were the lawyers that would be taking Caesar into the courthouse the next day. So while they were planning, I was just a little kid. I just found that a lot more interesting than playing in the vineyards and running around, in the dirt. I was kind of around the campfires where the lawyers were talking. And I find that language is very much a part of me today. It's very much in Water and Power. You hear people speak in a way that you don't often think of a homeboy in a wheelchair speaking in a poetic way. The character Water is as a lawyer as well as an elected official. And Power, even though he's a cop, he's educated. They're U.S.E, UCLA. So I've always been pretty fascinated with that idea of language. And the better we can articulate, the more clear our story can be. The lesson I learned with making Water and Power the movie was that a lot of times my language had to get out of the way of, cinema is a very visual language, and theater is a very verbal language. It's all about, the text. And so there are times when, if you just getting my words out of the way so the actors could act, what you see in one look, you could do a page of dialogue on stage and everybody would love it, but you can't do a page of dialogue in a movie. You could do a whole page of dialogue with just, in 1 second, the way Water looks at his brother Power. You know that he loves him. You know that he hates him. You know that he can't live without him. and that's what great actors like Nicholas and Enrique and Emilio and Clancy Brown and Wanda de Jesus, that's what they do, and that was new for me. I'd never been so up close and personal to it, and had the responsibility to capture it as a director. Been a stage actor. I've directed on stage, but different animals altogether.
Well, thank you very much. And we look forward for Water and Power on May 2nd.
You're welcome.